Hey everybody, Jane here, and today I thought we would have just a little conversation about why authors might choose to use pen names. So, I don't know if you're aware, I've been pretty open about it in the past. I do use a pen name. Now, Jane is my actual middle name, but it's not my first name. I did choose to use a pen name for a variety of reasons, and we can talk about some of the reasons that an author, including myself, might choose to use a pen name.
Pictures and patterns put into words that stream across the page, capturing life as soft spoken.
Okay, so I have always kind of known I wanted to use a pen name. I have been using a pen name since I was a teenager, off and on. And so it really wasn't strange to me when I started self publishing to go ahead and use pen names. I say pen names because I've had more than one. Jane is my primary name I use these days, but I have done other books under different pen names. So let's start with one reason you might choose to use a pen name, and that is your job. So I work in healthcare, and I've met a lot of other authors who work in professional spaces. Nurses, teachers, people who, depending on what they write, might be uncomfortable or make other people uncomfortable with their books. So I am a romance novelist, and some of my stuff is fairly spicy. And so I made the decision a long time ago when I published my first book that I didn't want to use my real name, and that was part of the consideration. At the time, I had planned on eventually going back to nursing school. I have a degree in health information management, and at the time that I published my first book, I was working in medical records. And I had kind of thought, well, I still want to go do nursing, but at the time I had babies at home and I already had a degree in medical records, so I was just working with that. And it just seemed to be like a smart move if I was going to write potentially spicy, controversial stuff to have a little bit of distance from my real name, which an employer might look up if I send in a resume, as opposed to like my writing name. Now, I have in recent years, and I may change this up in the future, put a note on my resumes that I do write and the primary name I write under, because sometimes a job I'm applying for has some marketing skills or other, kind of writing skills, and adding that I'm an author is a helpful thing to add to a resume, but I don't always put it, and I like the option because I never want to be in a position where a author controversy would cost me a real life job. I am not a full-time author. I don't make enough as an author to be a full-time author, and so it's really important to me to keep those lives a bit separated. All right, let's talk about the second reason that many authors, including myself, choose to use a pen name. And that reason is brand. So, this is common for authors, even as famous as Nora Roberts, who write different types of books. And they want to make sure their audience knows what kind of book they're picking up when they pick up that book. So in the past, I've written nonfiction, I've written children's books, I've written Christian romance, and all of those have a different audience. And I want to make sure that the people who are looking at one type of book aren't confused with all the other books. And also, especially when you write inspirational romance and smexy romance, those are often not the same audience. And I didn't want there to be confusion. I also didn't want people to be like, oh, I'm reading this inspirational, but this person also writes, you know, smutty stuff. Maybe I don't want to keep reading. They're inspirational, even though, for me, writing both were valid experiences. So I think A lot of times, if you see writers who have multiple names, it's because they want to make sure that their brand for that name stays intact. They want to make sure that people are searching for the right type books and know what they're getting. So, for instance, I don't know how many people know, Agatha Christie actually wrote some romances, but people who are looking for Agatha Christie nowadays aren't typically looking for romances. They're looking for mysteries. And so many writers just have different pen names to protect their brand and to make sure that people know what they're getting when they pick up one of their books. And a side that is also related to brand is simply that if an author makes major mistakes, because we are all human, and for whatever reason does damage to their brand, they have the opportunity to kind of restart their brand, especially if they're a smaller indie author. It's something that they can do. And while I hope I never make such a terrible mistake that I have to restart my brand, I like that to be an option for me because, I'm human. And people sometimes don't think about the fact that authors are often just doing the best they can with the knowledge they have. I might at some point say something irreparably controversial that I don't realize is irreparably controversial and cause a rift with my audience. I hope that never happens, and I try so hard to be careful of the things that I say and to be very conscious of how anything I say can be taken, but it's always a risk. And I look to it like some of my older writings where I wasn't always as careful about certain things, and I always hope that people are fairly forgiving of any mistakes I have made in the past. But just in case I make an irreparable mistake, I do like that I could write under a different pen name and get a fresh, clean slate. Now, obviously, I'd have to start anew on social media, and that would cause so many issues. And all the work that I've done would be pretty wiped out, and that would suck. But, at the end of the day, it is nice to know that if you make a major author mistake, you can start over with a new name and not totally alienate all of the potential people in your audience over whatever mistake you made. The next one is family. So I come from a very conservative family, and having a daughter who writes smexy stuff isn't always something that my parents, who are very religious, would want to advertise. And so it's been nice to use a pen name that is not associated with their daughter. I know my mom has told some people that I'm a writer, but this allows her some privacy in case she doesn't want people to know. Additionally, I have kids. And if my kids are not comfortable with their schoolmates knowing that mom writes smexy books, you know, that's their prerogative. They don't have to tell anybody that their mom's a writer. And nobody is going to make fun of them because they found out that your mom, writes werewolf romances. And so that was a huge thing for me, is to protect the privacy of my children and my parents, especially because even though what I write is romance, there are some smexy scenes. It's it's not it's not super spicy. I don't want to give anybody that impression, but it's enough that I want to protect the people in my life who might not want to be associated with that sort of writing. And by, you know, putting a pen name out, it protects my children and my parents from that association. I would also say for my children, it just gives them an added layer of protection from people who might be inappropriate on social media regarding me and or regarding family. Most authors are pretty safe, but every now and then you get like a super fan or something that happens that can be unsafe and lead to situations that are dangerous. And I always want to do my best to protect my kids from any kind of danger. Another reason that somewhat ties into why I chose to use a pen name, but is a very valid reason, is that either your real name is associated with, a different brand. Like if you were named Stephen King, you wouldn't want to write as Stephen King because people would assume you're Stephen King, particularly if you're writing something that is not horror. Maybe it would work for you if you write horror, but if you're writing, high fantasy and a lot of elves and dwarves and maybe cozy fantasy or even something like romance, you would not want the name Stephen King because you're going to be giving the wrong brand and the wrong impression. So sometimes your name is already in use by a famous author. That is not the case for me. The other thing, and this is kind of the case for me, is my actual name is a little bit hard to pronounce and is not a super common name. Spelling it would be kind of complicated and confusing. It would be hard to remember. There's a lot of variations of the spelling. And by using a much more simple name, I make it simpler on readers trying to find me online. So sometimes if you have a tricky name to pronounce, it can be advantageous to have a pen name instead that is easier for people to remember the spelling of and the pronunciation. Kind of similarly in this vein, I could have probably made this a fifth bullet point, but I'm just going to chalk it under this one. Especially if you are a female, your name may change over time. And you may not want to change it, but it may be triggering in some instances to have that name. So, as an example, I am twice divorced. One of those ex-husbands I'm on pretty good terms with. The other, we get along as well as we can, but not my favorite person. And I'm so grateful that I don't have my published books with their last name. I did choose in both instances to go back to my maiden name, and that was a very important choice to me. And I would not have wanted to keep a professional name on a book that was associated with one of my exes. I don't think would have felt good. And especially like if I went on later to marry somebody else, they might have a little bit of an ick factor with that. Maybe they wouldn't, but I just, for myself, find that a pen name makes that easier so that I don't have to, as my name potentially changes over the years, I don't have to go back and rebrand my books all the way through. And also, because I'm using a pen name, no potential future husband is going to get upset and hurt that my books have my ex's last name. So, anyway, that was 4 reasons that some authors, including myself, may choose to use a pen name. If you use a pen name and it was for reasons other than that, please leave a message in the comments below. And otherwise, if you have thoughts about pen names, please leave that in the comments. If you've gotten to the end of this video, you can leave a book emoji to let me know that you saw the whole video. And this has been Jane. Thank you. Bye.